Hey friends. So I did not post a daily dose of hope yesterday because as I was about to record, the plane crash happened in DC. And it just energetically didn't feel right to post something at that moment. So I took a little time to digest everything, to think about everything. And I'm going to mention just right now that my thoughts and prayers go out to all the victims and their families. And this is absolutely horrific. And I hope we get some clarity at some point as to why this happened. And I hope there really is an investigation. I am worried with the people who are currently in charge that we may never know the actual truth. I'm just going to say it because we now have the Orange Monster getting up and saying that he is blaming DEI hires, essentially. Women, people of color, anyone non-white for this horrific tragedy happening, which is unconscionable. It is beyond the pale. It is disgusting. I'm going to play for you right now Chris Murphy, who is a senator of Connecticut, saying basically everything that I've just said. But I think it's important to show that the blue team is standing up. They are saying things. They are not being as loud as we all want them to be, but I think a lot of what they are saying is being drowned out. So I'm going to play for you what Senator Murphy said, and then I'm going to come on the other side of it and talk about something.
I just watched some of Donald Trump's press conference about the tragedy last night, and it was disgusting. It was disgusting. First of all, our hearts go out to the victims' families, to the first responders. This is awful. But what is also awful is to watch the President of the United States stand up at the White House and claim that it is women or Black people or Latinos working at the FAA that caused this crash. This idea that by hiring non-white men, you are putting the nation's safety in jeopardy, or that non-white men caused this crash, is unconscionable. We need to get to the bottom of what happened. Nobody's going to know today what caused that crash. But what we absolutely know is that it is not women working at the FAA that caused that crash. What we definitely know, it is not Black employees at the FAA that caused that crash. There are some true things. President Trump forced out of office the administrator of the FAA. He's been waging a regular assault on public employees since he came into office. He forced the entire Aviation Security Review Board, Advisory Board, to step down. We don't know whether those things had anything to do with this crash, but we should take the time to get to the facts. And everybody in this country should be outraged that Donald Trump is standing up on that podium lying to you, deliberately lying to you about what the cause was, and further using the White House as a means to try to divide us from each other. That performance was disgraceful, and every single senator and member of Congress should call him out for how disgraceful it was.
And I hope more of our elected officials do exactly what he just did. I should tell you that putting pressure on the Orange Monster and raising voices in opposition of things he's doing does work. It does matter. And I'm going to give you an example. A couple nights ago, he froze all federal funding overnight, which caused a constitutional crisis. And our blue team members did actually do their jobs, and they got up and they called him out on it. I'm going to give you a few examples, and there was a reversal within 24 hours. So it does matter. And they are doing something. I know it doesn't feel like they're doing enough, believe me. I agree with you, but they are not being silent. And I think a lot of people have been worried that they're just laying down and letting these things happen. And that's not what I'm seeing. So I'm going to show you some of the people who stood up very loudly and said something about the freeze on all federal funds.
Donald Trump's reckless action cut off funding to law enforcement, farmers, schools, childcare, veterans, and healthcare. While he was out golfing, he threw the country into crisis. This is not bold. It's not leadership. It's stupid, buffoonish, childish of exactly what they did. Childcare providers across the state, law enforcement, our prisons, things that we count on, individuals on Medicare, things that we know matter to people's lives. And I want to be very clear about this. Minnesota is a state that pays far more into the federal government than we get back. Those are our dollars that he is stealing unconstitutionally. Congress, as I served, as Attorney General Ellison served, appropriates the dollars. This is so far beyond the pale to try and pull these dollars back. And the real thing about this was he has no idea. I understand this. Donald Trump has no idea the implications on this.
Despite what the White House press secretary said at the podium earlier, I believe it is my duty to report to you the truth of what actually happened today in Illinois. Donald Trump's administration is lying to you. The White House's attempt to walk back what they did today does not match what we saw on the ground. They assured us that Medicaid would not be affected. That was a lie. Our state agencies were unable to access the Medicaid system until an hour ago, preventing payments for services. And this has been reported from states across the nation. When we reached out to federal agencies, they informed us that they have been directed not to discuss any guidance with states. They have canceled previously scheduled meetings for this week. The White House assured us that Head Start would not be affected. That was a lie. Providers across the state experienced outages, and some were unable to make their payroll. They assured us that they were doing nothing to take away individual assistance from the most vulnerable people in our state. But they refused to say that they would restore LIHEAP, the Low-Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, payments to support the unemployment system, and Meals on Wheels. These are programs that hundreds of thousands of Illinoisans depend on. Children, seniors, veterans, working parents. Let's just be clear about what happened over the last 24 hours. At 7:42 p.m. last night, we saw a memo from the White House saying that they were pausing federal funding across the board. This morning, along with all 50 states across the country, we discovered that our ability to access critical federal funding had been cut off. And now the administration would like us to believe that these were just coincidental website outages. Donald Trump and his administration have not earned the benefit of the doubt. They are either lying to us or they are critically incompetent.
Last night, President Trump plunged the country into chaos. Without a shred of warning, the Trump administration announced a halt to virtually all federal funds across the country. In an instant, Donald Trump has shut off billions, perhaps trillions of dollars that directly support states, cities, towns, schools, hospitals, small businesses, and most of all, American families. This is a dagger at the heart of the average American family in red states, in blue states, in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas. It is just outrageous. Funds for things like disaster assistance, local law enforcement, rural hospitals, aid to the elderly, food for people in need, all are on the chopping block in this new administration. Why? They need tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy, and these cuts, they think, will fund them. This decision is lawless, dangerous, destructive, cruel. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. Plain and simple, this is Project 2025. Project 2025 by another name. They knew how unpopular Project 2025 was, but the right-wing ideologues are still in control. So they had to do it in a different way, but it has the same consequences and will have the same horrible, negative, overwhelming reaction from the American people.
Sending you love, sending you solidarity. Until the next one.